Hi friends! So if you're watching this video, you're probably wondering, how do I go about applying to medical school? What is the primary application? What are secondary applications? What does this process even entail? This video and the following couple of videos are made in the hopes to provide some clarity in the application process for medical school. This video will be going over an overview of the primary application, the first step in applying to medical school. So the easiest way to go through how to apply is to go through what the application actually looks like. Broken down, the primary consists of some basic components. So some basic info like identifying information, childhood information, family income and information, and then your funding for post-secondary education. It also consists of your stats. So things like your transcripts or your grades, as well as your MCAT scores. The third major component are your essays. So this will consist of your works and activities, your personal statement, and if applicable, the disadvantaged, now called the other impactful experiences essay. The fourth component are the letters of recommendation, and the fifth component is your school list. So the first page is basically your identifying information, your contact information, and your biographical information. The second page consists of your childhood information, so things like where did you live for the majority of your upbringing. It will phrase this as where did you spend the majority of the first 18 years of your life. Was it an underserved area? This is where that will be listed. Your family income level on average for the first 18 years of your life. Did you have a job and did that money contribute to family income before the age of 18? And how did you pay for your post-secondary education? This is also where your disadvantaged or your other impactful experiences essay comes in, but we'll get back to that in a bit. The next page will have the parental or guardian information, so education levels and occupations, your socioeconomic status, whether or not you're disadvantaged, you're first generation, or if you have siblings, and any additional information. So did you previously matriculate, or do you have any institutional actions? Do you have any felonies or misdemeanors, or do you have any military discharges? The next section, they'll ask you to manually input every course you've ever taken or plan on taking at the post-secondary level. So anything university level, anything after high school level. This later gets cross-referenced with your transcripts. For each course, you're going to input the school name, the status at the time it was taken, the academic year during which it was taken, the academic term it was taken during, and the course classification. Course classification has to do with, was it a BCPM course, or a bio, chemistry, physics, or math course, or was it literally anything else? You're going to input the course number, so on your transcripts, or if you're going through the school's course catalog, how does the course code show up? The course type, if it was standard, it remains blank, but this is where you're going to have options for things like AP courses, honors, repeated courses, pass-fail courses, withdrawals, etc. This is also where you designate current and future coursework. You're going to list how many transcript hours it was. So on your transcript, how many credits was this? And you're going to list the grade. Note that the AMCAS grading scale may differ from your school's scale. AMCAS also uses these symbols at the end to designate whether AMCAS is calculating it into your application's GPA or whether the course was inputted in a way that checks out with your transcript. When you submit the application, the final report will generate a stats summary page as part of your application. This will have a summary of your GPAs and your MCAT scores. So some things are worth noting. You have 3 relevant GPAs: bio, chem, physics, and math, all other, or total cumulative GPA. There are also individual lines for each year by status. If you're a super senior but you don't graduate, this gets added to your senior GPA. Undergraduate postbacks get a separate line, and graduate classes, like special master's programs, get a separate line. This is also where your MCAT scores will populate. Every score automatically gets uploaded from most recent to the oldest, and this is where things like MCAT and GPA trends will be seen. Next section are the essays. Between AMCAS and ACOMAS, there's a few minor differences, at least as of 2023. AMCAS will have the disadvantaged or the other impactful experiences essay, as it was renamed in this past year, which gets 1,325 characters, including spaces, and this is only on AMCAS. Note that not everyone is going to need or want to write an other impactful experiences essay. AECOMAS also provides you a COVID-19 impacts essay where you get 2,500 characters to elaborate on how the impacts of the pandemic have affected your academic, extracurricular, or general pre-med experience. The next basic set of essays are the works and activities. AMCAS gives you 700 characters for each slot with a maximum of 15 slots. You can designate 3 slots as being most meaningful, which gives you an additional 1,325 characters, including spaces. AECOMAS gives you 600 characters for each slot and an unlimited number of slots, but there are no most meaningful experiences. And then your personal comment gets 5,300 characters for both AMCAS and AECOMAS. Again, on AMCAS, you get 15 slots and 700 characters for each of those slots. Then 3 of those slots can be designated as most meaningful experiences, where you get an additional 1,325 characters. Note that these are separate text boxes, so do not begin one sentence in the 700 character blurb and then finish it in the 1,325 character blurb. There are 19 categories that you can choose from. And since there are more categories than there are slots, you're obviously not going to need to hit every single category, and that's 100% not expected of you to do so. On AECOMAS, again, you get a limitless number of slots and 600 characters for each slot. And the categories of activities fall into 2 major categories for either experiences or achievements. Appropriately categorizing your activities can be super important, especially if there's a high yield category that you might be low on hours for and need to make sure you escape being screened out. So each activity is going to require the categorization or type of experience, the name of the experience, a contact, so the name and title that they held in the organization, an email and phone number, the organization itself, and the location of the organization. It's also going to require the date ranges during which you did the activity, as well as the hours completed. And the last essay that is mentioned, the disadvantaged or other impactful experiences essay, is AMCAS only. Again, not everyone is expected to answer yes to the button that makes this essay available, so per the description, this question is designed to give applicants the opportunity to provide additional context about the challenges they may have experienced during their lives. This question is intended for those applicants who have had impactful life experiences and who have faced or overcome challenges in a variety of areas. Again, it is not expected for everyone to fill out this portion of the application or to write this essay. So some important things to consider when deciding if this is applicable for you. Did you have significantly challenging life experiences outside of the quote-unquote norm of the average applicant? Did it impact your journey in trying to get into medical school? Would sharing this information give context to gaps in academics or delays in gaining extracurriculars? And would you feel prepared to discuss this in an interview? So areas where challenges might be considered: family background, community settings, financial background, educational experiences, or other general life circumstances beyond your control that impacted your life and or presented barriers. These are just some examples that are notably not an exhaustive list of all the circumstances that could qualify you to write a disadvantaged or other impactful experiences essay. So I would write the disadvantaged or other impactful experiences essay first, if applicable, because it kind of gets the trauma dumping out of the way and keeps it out of the personal statement. Once you've mostly solidified the content on your disadvantaged or other impactful experiences essay, I started with an exercise recommended by the NIH PreMed advisors, where you list all your activities by name and write 2 to 3 sentences detailing what you did, any stories that stood out, and a lesson or attribute that you learned or a competency that you learned or demonstrated during this experience. Then, allow that to be the basis of where you start both your works and activities and your personal statement simultaneously. So, start writing whichever feels more comfortable for you to start writing. But as you reflect and expand on this list of experiences and those 3-ish sentences that will evolve to become your works and activities, start brainstorming and narrowing down to maybe 5 or 6 stories that you think would be good to include in your personal statement. And as you develop your works and activities, start drafting your personal statement with various combinations of 3 or 4 stories. Lastly, save everything. Whatever isn't used in your personal statement can be used in a most meaningful experiences blurb and or a secondary essay. Once you've solidified your AMCAS essays, use this as the basis for your AECOMAS application if applicable. This is because the AMCAS application timing process is a lot more sensitive than the AECOMAS application timing. It's also a lot easier to trim down from 700 characters to 600 characters for your works and activities than it is to bulk up. So 5 major letters will cover the requirements for almost every school. You're going to need 2 science academic letters, so you're going to need letters from professors who taught you a science class, 1 non-science academic letter. It would also be super beneficial to have 1 physician letter. You're also going to want 1 non-clinical letter. Ideally, you add or put under the non-clinical letter category either the PI that you had for a research activity or any contacts or supervisors that you had for any of your most meaningful experiences. Under no circumstances are you to request letters from relatives or family friends. 1 major exception for if they directly supervised your work in some official setting, so a workplace or a nonprofit organization. Last on the application is your school list. So the number 1 recommendation for developing a school list is buying MSAR. This has most of the information available in 1 organized place. I narrowed down personally firstly by what locations or states I was willing to tolerate in the least picky way, then eliminate schools that you are just wildly below their 10th percentile cutoff for MCAT or GPA. Then I would make an Excel sheet and note in-state versus out-of-state preferences, and then narrow down and eliminate accordingly based on this data and your financial situation as far as how many schools you're able to apply to. And then lastly, in general, apply to all the schools in your state unless they're Ivies and or they have no in-state preferences and your stats are just wildly out of their range. Before you hit submit, make sure you check to see whether you qualify for the fee assistance program. The AMCAS processing fee, so the cost of applying to just 1 school, is $175. Each additional school after that is $45 per school. Secondaries cost anywhere between $30 to $200 per school, depending on where you're applying to. This is an expensive process. However, the fee assistance program waives the processing fee and the cost of applying for an additional 19 schools. So you apply to 20 schools for free in total and pay an additional $45 for each school after that. And then most schools will either waive or significantly reduce the cost of secondaries for fee assistance program qualifying applicants. If you haven't taken the MCAT yet, the registration fee gets reduced from $330 to $135. The AAMC bundle and MSAR are also free for fee assistance program applicants. It's based on the household income, so parents are included unless you are 26 or older. So if you're about to turn 26, consider waiting until you turn 26 to apply for the fee assistance program. The fee assistance program does not retroactively get applied, however. So make sure you do this before you hit the submit button. So what to expect from your application process? So this is a chart over the last 3 cycles of applicants with certain MCAT and GPA combinations that got into medical school through AMCAS, so the MD process. Across the last 3 cycles, 41% of all applicants got an acceptance to medical school. So green is everything above 40%. These combos are either as favorable or more favorable than the quote-unquote average applicant. Everything between 30 and 40% is highlighted in orange, where the odds are not quite as favorable, but likely with compelling experiences, people made it happen. And then I didn't bother highlighting below 30%. It's also worth noting that just overall, the likelihood of any average applicant is 41%, which is objectively worse than the odds of correctly calling heads on a coin flip. While this is just stats and it doesn't factor in extracurriculars, if you're uncomfortable with your stats odds and you're uncomfortable with where you stand with extracurriculars, we've established that the application process can be several thousands of dollars, and really only you can decide if your odds seem like a wise investment. Lastly, the stats will differ and the green ranges will likely expand for DO schools. However, it's worth noting that DO schools still look for competitive ranges of extracurriculars in addition to meeting some minimum threshold of stats. So for those of you who are okay with your stats combos and who are okay with your extracurriculars, what does the application process realistically wind up looking like? This is data from the Matriculating Students Questionnaire. Based on this, the largest percentage of students completed secondaries for 25 or more schools, with the median completed being 18. The largest percentage of folks only got invited to 1 interview. Initially, that might feel really discouraging until you remember you only need acceptance to 1 school. And in fact, of the folks who matriculated in 2020, 2021, and 2022, Nearly half of all matriculants only got accepted to one school anyway. I think this is really worth taking into consideration when inevitably throughout the cycle you find your way on Student Doctor Network or on Reddit or Discord and see all those folks with their fourth or fifth interview going, "Where's my interview invite?" The largest chunk of us who see success will only get one interview invite, and that's okay. You only need one acceptance anyway. So if you get discouraged throughout the cycle because you're not seeing many interview invites or acceptances, you're not alone and you're not doing poorly. This really is just par for the course. And no matter what happens after you hit submit, you will get through this and you will be stronger for it.